Welcome back. As you know, I'm Eli the Computer Guy here for the Daily Blob to remind you that the US government is never responsible for any of its own failures. And this is something that you might want to take to heart over the next over 3.5 years. I think about this, and again, I got my criminal justice degree way back when, and we had to learn about the social services programs and that type of thing. And it was curious how kids who were in questionable circumstances with their parents, maybe their parents were having hard times paying the bills, or maybe it was mildly abusive, that type of thing. Social services would come in, they would pull the kids out of that situation in order to protect them, and then put them into foster homes where they would be abused and brutalized and raped and molested, and the government essentially just shrugged their shoulders. Well, we tried, right? So the kid was in a mildly bad situation. We'd all agree that the kid was in a mildly bad situation. And then the government put the kid directly into hell. And then wash their hands of all culpability. I think this is an interesting thing to be thinking about with the next over 3.5 years. Over 3.5 years. It's only been 4 months, buckos, with how the government is currently operating. Many of the systems that are in place to supposedly protect the population, and basically the question of what happens if those systems fail, and then the population is attacked, and the government's just like, well, oops. This basically comes from the E-Verify system, what we'll be talking about today. So Trump has decided that he wants to deport 3,000 illegal immigrants a day. That's the idea. In order to deport 3,000 illegal immigrants a day, basically they have to go after every illegal immigrant that they can find. All the low-hanging illegal immigrants that they can find are going to get chucked out the door. The interesting thing with a lot of these illegal immigrants is that they're actually here to do work. When Trump talks about the illegal immigrants, he talks about the rapists and the drug smugglers and the criminals and all those types of folks. But the funny thing is there's not enough apparently of them to go after. So he's going after the people that are actually doing 9-to-5 jobs. They risk their lives to come to this country so they can do really crappy 9-to-5 jobs. And so they're going to those 9-to-5 jobs, and those 9-to-5 jobs are now getting raided. I do think it's interesting. A lot of the 9-to-5 jobs that are now getting raided are part of the food distribution system in the United States. You know, when I talk about Trump willing to destroy manufacturing in the United States, willing to destroy the largest, the most valuable companies in the United States, willing to destroy Harvard in the United States, willing to do all those things to directly to the detriment of our country, it is important to understand those are simply specific instances of things, but it keeps going. So one of the big things that happens in the U.S. is meat packing plants. So meat packing plants are not great places to work. Even if you're not a vegan, being in a place where they slaughter hundreds or thousands of critters every day, they have to be skinned the whole 9 yards, is not a place where most people want to work. So the interesting things is if you risk your life to come to this country and you're just trying to find a 9-to-5 job, right? A meatpacking plant, well, it's better than back where you're from. So we have a lot of illegal immigrants that work at these meatpacking plants. And so now it appears these meatpacking plants are targets of the ICE raids, which is going to be curious for our food distribution network. If we do not have the people to process the food that we consume, what is that going to do for us as a society? Should we deal with illegal immigrants? Yes. Is this the way to deal with it? Probably not. The curious thing, though, is that employers can use what is called the E-Verify systems. I used the E-Verify system years and years and years ago. And the idea is if you're worried about illegal immigrants, right, you don't want an illegal immigrant, you don't want an ICE raid, you can run people's identification through the E-Verify system to verify that they're a citizen of the United States. Think about how dystopian this is. And this has been around for 15, 20 years at this point. Right? If you get you have to be approved by the government to get a job under the E-Verify system. But that's its own dystopia. Put that to the side. E-Verify Real ID erosion of our rights as a free people to the bureaucratic process. But anyways, right? But the interesting thing is apparently the E-Verify system doesn't actually work that well. Apparently the government knows that the E-Verify system is broken, so you have companies using the E-Verify system in order to make sure they're in compliance, but because the E-Verify system is broken, they're legally in compliance because they're using it, but it doesn't mean that their companies cannot be raided by ICE and have 70 employees dragged out to be sent off to Guantanamo or wherever the hell it is Trump thinks that people that want to work 9-to-5 jobs should go. And this will be curious. The video I just did was talking about Claude AI for the national security apparatus. So Anthropic has now literally created AI services for national security. One of the questions I have is, how do we verify that the answers that the AI is providing is actually correct and horrible things don't happen to good people simply because, the folks that run Anthropic didn't want to make a couple extra $1 billion this year. And so this becomes an interesting question as more of these technology solutions are being used to quote unquote protect the population, but those systems are broken because the government doesn't feel it's necessary to maintain those systems. What disaster are we in for? So it comes from Politico, but it's been talked about other places. Everything is going behind a paywall nowadays, or a wall. It's not even a paywall. I just don't want to log into things. So anyways, this has been talked about other places too. Immigration raid at Omaha meat production plant leaves company officials bewildered. The company president said, quote, "We do everything by the book." And that's what you have to understand. That's what you have to understand in this new world. You can do everything by the book and still get punished to high hell and back. Immigration authorities raided an Omaha meat production plant Tuesday morning and took dozens of workers away in buses, leaving company officials bewildered because they said they had followed the law. The raid happened around 9 a.m. at Glen Valley Foods in South Omaha, an area where nearly a quarter of the residents were foreign-born according to the 2020 census. Chad Hartman, president of the food packaging company, said the front office was stunned by the aggressive nature of federal officials' raid and confused by why the company was targeted. Quote, "My biggest issue is why us," Hartman said. "We do everything by the book. The plant uses E-Verify, the federal database used to check the immigration status of employees. When he said as much to U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officers who carried out the raid, they told him the E-Verify system is, quote, broken. Quote, "I mean, what am I supposed to do with that?" Hartman said. "This is your system run by the government and you're raiding me because your system is broken." Meatpacking plants rely heavily on immigrant workers who are willing to do the physically demanding work. The industry has not yet been the focus of President Donald Trump's immigration enforcement efforts, but the administration has been intensifying its efforts in recent weeks. CEO and owner Gary Rowler told WOWT in Omaha he wasn't made aware of the operation ahead of time. He said federal agents entered the plant with a list of 97 people they wanted to screen. A supervisor at Glen Valley Foods said she was in a morning meeting when federal officials began banging on the plant's doors and yelling, "Homeland Security! Land of the free," or jack-booted stormtroopers come to your company, bang on the door and scream, "Homeland Security." This is the land of freedom that Donald Trump envisions. Doesn't that make you feel comfortable? The jack-booted stormtroopers coming for you. Quote, "They just came in and said that it was a raid and that we had to get everybody out of production," Favilla said. Employees were separated by those who had documents showing they were U.S. citizens, those who had valid work documents, and those who did not have documents, she said. About 70 people were taken away in buses with the windows blacked out. Among them were two of her cousins who immigrated from Honduras. ICE officials confirmed in an email the raid at Glen Valley Foods, saying it was, quote, "based on an ongoing criminal investigation into large-scale employment of aliens without authorization to work in the United States." They said it was likely the largest work site enforcement operation in Nebraska since the start of Trump's second term. Hartman, the company president, said he planned to contact Republican Representative Don Bacon, who represents the district, and other Nebraska leaders to try to get answers. By Tuesday afternoon, Bacon had issued a statement saying the ICE raid sought to investigate stolen identities and that, quote, "ICE verified that Glen Valley Foods complied with E-Verify 100% and is a victim in this as well. So yeah, it'll be curious to see how this works out going into the future. You know, when you think about it, trying to round up 3,000 illegal immigrants a day is probably a difficult task. Right? Trying to round up 3,000 drug dealing or rapists, gun runners is probably a difficult task. So the Trump administration, in order to keep the numbers that they want to keep and to try to, pomp, show the pomp and circumstance to the TV screens, if they're going to be trying to go after that many people, then probably more and more legitimate businesses are going to be targeted. And the issue is, right? If you're told use the E-Verify system to verify that your people are legitimate, and the E-Verify system is then broken, how much damage is this going to do to businesses that at least thought that they were legitimate? They thought, or they were going by the law, which they thought was going to protect them. And now all of a sudden, if you have 70 employees rounded up, shoved into the buses, and taken off to some detention center somewhere, what is that going to do to your business? And think about this. Again, we think about food production, the trade war between the U.S. and China, whether China will or will not accept our agricultural goods. You already have so much uncertainty in the agricultural realm. And now you're going to add yet another layer of uncertainty. It becomes curious, to look at what the economics of producing food in the United States is going to continue to look like. And what will that do to our food supply? A president of the United States who only cares about punching. Where are we hearing about the E-Verify system being improved? Where are we hearing about systems being built, things being created? What do we hear? We hear about the destruction. We hear about the jackbooted stormtroopers showing up at your door and screaming Homeland Security. Where will this end at the end of the day? Be curious to see. So what do you think about this with the whole E-Verify system? What do you think about in the land of the free that you have to beg to the federal government to be approved for a job, to make sure that you're legal? Right? Do you think about that? What do you think about that system actually being broken? What do you think about this current time frame with what is going on? The system that is literally supposed to protect employers to make sure that they're doing things properly so they can keep their organizations going. What do you think about the fact that the federal government knows that system is broken, right? But the focus is still rounding up the immigrants. Who the hell cares what happens to the businesses? As they say, Trump has a lot of experience in the business world. He has a lot of experience bankrupting businesses. I don't know. Put your thoughts down below. With that, see y'all later.